Anybody else from the committee?
Let's discuss. I'm not sure that's clear to me.
Well, I agree with Lee. I would like to see it, whether or not it becomes the new ordinance from the Planning Commission. I hate it when I have to go here and there and 10 different places to find out what the ordinance is. I would rather repeat it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it needs to be added in there.
Okay.
Anybody else from the committee? Anybody from the public? Judy, this is where you get to look. If you, anyone from the public, if you raise your hand, you'll pop up to the top of Judy's screen so she can see you raised your hand.
Just a thumbs up.
I'm not even seeing that on my screen.
Okay.
In my lesson, it was there, but with your screen shared, I don't see any of that.
Layla has raised her hand. There you go. You actually want to say something, or did you just want to show a hand raised? Go ahead.
I wanted to do both. I'm fine either way. I just think we should probably defer to legal counsel in terms of whether or not we repeat, because the 94 ordinance, for example, the noise ordinance is really long. So I think we should just note that. So when we send this to James, our city attorney, to review, he'll probably give us the recommendation. If it does include a reference except and not the actual language, we can work to support that, having a cross-reference issue by being specific about the section, and then also perhaps having it as a resource online and part of an FAQ that you got these other two ordinances to look at. But I would recommend we defer to James in terms of how we do it, because the ordinance is setting law, and so I'm not sure how it works to have it duplicated. So I just wanted to highlight that for the committee, that the attorney might change that. I don't care either way. The second thing, to Lee's point, we should reference the existing definition, because that's what's approved. But then if we, again, have that reference, that's the advantage of the reference, is that we don't have to update this ordinance when the planning and zoning ordinance is updated. So I know there's kind of downsides to both options, because in one option you have to kind of look for it elsewhere, but it's cleaner, because then when you make amendments to the others ordinances, you don't have to come back here and do it. So I just wanted to put that out there, just in terms of how these things get connected.
Okay, so maybe if we leave it just exactly like it is for James to look at, along with my note, which can you all see my notes, or are they blocked? They're blocked on my screen.
Are you yellow?
No, it's
Off to
over
the
on
side.
Do we need to add something that it says it complies with current documents? So maybe we just leave that in there for James and let him look at it.
Yeah.
Julianne, I happen to be able to see your hand raised, but probably just by chance. So again, if you can find, there you go. Thank you. Go ahead, Julianne.
Sorry, I couldn't find it in the beginning. I think it's important, perhaps here you could say, based on Manzanita zoning ordinance 95-4, but spell out what the specifics of the STR ordinance will be, and just say based on, because the Planning Commission one can change from time to time, but that doesn't mean your specifics that you've identified here, Joe, would necessarily change in these specifics. These are the things that you really want people to pay attention to. So that's my 2 cents worth. The other thing I'd like to say, and this is a bit out of order, is I really want to be here, but I have to leave in 20 minutes. And I do have one completely detoured question about fire extinguishers and the requirement. But if you allow me, I'll ask that whenever you want, but I'll be gone in 20 minutes. Thank you.
What section is it in? You remember? Fire extinguishers?
Me or you? No, it's a process question that I have.
Oh, go ahead. I'm easy.
Okay, so the question is, once you're great is what you are. Once the ordinance is written that we have a fire extinguisher on every floor, who determines the size of the fire extinguisher? Right now, the size is so large and so heavy that many people would not be able to pick it up in the case of a fire. We're buying them. They're more than $100 each. I've always had 2 fire extinguishers in my units, one next to the fireplace and one on the kitchen counter. But this one is an industrial sized one. So from the time that you write the ordinance and it gets to somebody in the city to specify more than what the ordinance says. The ordinance, I think, just says fire extinguisher, and now our city inspector people say it has to be of this very specific size. It weighs a ton. So the process question is between your ordinance and a policy and the application of a rule, who does that? How is that determined?
Juliana, I believe this is the size of the fire extinguisher is not in this ordinance. Is that, Judy?
That's
The,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
um,
okay.
This topic of fire extinguishers isn't part of this ordinance. The ordinance requires for an inspection according to the inspection list, and that is in the inspection list. So it's not referenced at all in this ordinance.
So that would be a question for Judy
staff.
and the city and staff, as opposed to us.
As opposed to,
Yes.
okay.
But we can,
Okay, thank
we just have passed it on for you.
Through inspections now, and so I've had to buy new extinguishers, and they're just so darn heavy I can hardly pick them up.
Okay, so we'll leave that for you and the staff to discuss.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anything else on the dwelling unit? So this is the version that we will send to James for review and have him weigh in on whether or not I kind of like based on myself, Julianne, but I don't know if that's the right legal term, but we can have James look at it and comment back to us. Anything else on this section? Okay. The next thing we changed, I changed this just because farther down, I just added MCA because that's the acronym that people are familiar with, and we reference it later on. So I just threw it in there. Any problems with that, anybody?
Mm-mm.
Okay. And then next is identification sign. What we were trying to get to here is some people were saying, well, I can't put it on my house because I've put it in my house. You're not going to be able to see it from the street. That was one thing. And then the other thing was if we put the MCA number in there or the telephone number in there, do we have to say the word short-term rental? And that was confusing to some people. So these changes show that we've removed the attached to the outside of the dwelling unit and just say that it has to maintain a sign which is visible from the street. And that corresponds with A, that you have to have a house number visible for the street. And then we took out the words identifies the dwelling as a short-term rental. And so now it just says which lists the telephone number for the owner or local contact agent as required. Comments, questions, suggestions?
I like your changes, Joe.
Okay. Anything else? This is too easy.
I think it's great.
Mhm. Same.
I've got notes, just notes. Okay, moving on. I can't find the moving on. Oh, and I changed it to, just on, still on that, such a sign shall include the MCA. And Judy, I'm not sure if this was correct. It just seems like if we're calling it, we call the short-term rental license the Manzanita Certificate of Authority, MCA, is that? And if that's correct, then we should just say because I don't want to confuse people again.
The MCA, the Manzanita Certificate of Authority is required in the transient lodging tax ordinance.
Right.
And we use one certificate as the short-term rental license / Manzanita Certificate of Authority. So it's a combined certificate and it addresses two separate ordinances. And so when we when we added the requirement to list the license number in the advertisement so that it's easier to find the illegal rentals when we're surfing online to do so, we opted to use the MCA number instead of STR number, because if you are going to cheat and just throw a number up there in an ad that's illegal, STR, people would understand what that meant. And if we use MCA, people don't know what that means. And so they're required to list it as MCA number, blah, blah, blah. People would be less likely to fake that because they don't really understand what they're looking at if they don't have a short-term rental license. So that is why it is like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so does this crossing out the word short-term rental license number and instead putting in the Manzanita Certificate of Authority, MCA, would that make it clearer or not?
Manzanita Certificate of Authority isn't defined in this ordinance. So
remember when I put in the MCA, I put in the
but it's not in the definitions. So I don't know if that would need to be added to, see, because it says right there that such license will also serve as the Manzanita Certificate of Authority required by the lodging tax ordinance. But it's referencing that. But I think that's just a legal question for James, if we would have to, include a definition to go with it down in another area.
So I think it looks cleaner the way that you have it. So if it's possible to have it done that way, I think that's much nicer.
So all we have to do is just say, James, can we make this change?
Mhm.
Okay. Anybody else on that?
Can
Okay,
we assume that James is going to be reviewing the entire document again for?
yeah, but
Okay,
I'm going to give him the copy with the yellow because he,
Sure.
yeah. Here's the hard one, parking. I think we all agree what we're trying to say is if a home has 4 bedrooms, it can have 5 off-street parking places plus 1 on-street parking place if there's one available. But the off-street parking places have to be approved parking places. They can't be in the middle of the yard. I think that's what we're trying to say. And it just got really complicated. So there's 2 rewordings here. And the difference is that I was trying to make it more clear with the green that if you want to have more parking spaces than the 2 that are mandated, they have to be sited off street, and the location and design shall comply with all pertinent city ordinances, standards, and policies. So what I'd like is for everybody to read the first paragraph and the second paragraph. Just, and does it make sense? Does it say what we want? Is it confusing? And especially those of you who aren't on the committee, who haven't seen these 20 times, is it clear what we're trying to say?
I'm going to speak up real quick. I think the in addition, person sleeping in the dwelling unit and all of that, I think is a little too much. I think it should be a little simpler. Well, let me think about what I would say.
In addition, you may occupy only one available. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I wouldn't say person sleeping in the dwelling unit. I mean, although we're suggesting that it's just because during the day they can park there, but I think that I don't like that part of it. Person sleeping in the dwelling unit. I think it should just be simple. You know, you have one additional parking space on the street. If that makes sense. I know you could probably reword it better than I can, but that's kind of what the gist I'm saying is that it should be a little bit more simpler. Just you have one extra parking space. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone sleeping in the unit. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think this was James added wording.
Oh, that makes sense. Sounds legalese. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I kind of had the same feeling. I couldn't figure out how to reword it. So anybody else?
I mean, I just think it should be simple. In addition, you know, each, I mean, I don't even think we need to say dwelling unit. I don't know, maybe it does need to say dwelling unit. In addition, each dwelling unit or whatever has one additional parking space on the street.
That's a little more clear than
Yeah.
what you just said.
Yeah.
Read again.
In addition, let's see, in addition, each dwelling unit will be assigned or not assigned. Each dwelling unit
May
has may use, yes, one on-street parking space.
while renting the dwelling unit.
How's
I don't even think you need to say that. In addition, each dwelling unit may use one on-street parking space, period.
There's the only thing I think, oh gosh, this is problematic with
Yeah.
the people who are learning about this. Where is that parking place precisely? Is it in front of the home? Or is it any place they choose? Because sometimes they're choosing to park in front of other people's homes.
Yes, and that's
You can park in front of other people's homes.
exactly.
But not 24/7.
Well, it goes on a little later. The
Okay.
next paragraph, which we're not seeing yet,
Okay.
addresses that. But yes, we're not saying that there's going to be an assigned on-street parking space.
Right.
We're just saying you can only have one, and hopefully, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to enforce,
Hmm.
but hopefully, by saying it, and as we get down to the next paragraph, we also say the number of parking spaces have to be listed in any advertisement.
I think if you just hand this neighbors and people, and we all become comfortable with it, then you can negotiate that yourself.
Right.
You can even go out and say, you know what, this is kind of a bad spot here. If you wouldn't mind moving over there. I mean, just give people that kind of language that gives them the ability to solve their own problems.
Yes.
Do you think it should say overnight parking space?
That's later.
Okay.
Let's get down to later, and then we'll come back up to here.
Okay.
Okay, this is what I want to say.
Vehicles of occupants of a short-term rental other than an approved off-street and one legal on-street shall be prohibited between the hours of 10 and 8. So we're saying they can continue to park one car on the street overnight. During the day, anybody can park on the street. I mean,
Mhm.
you know,
Well, really at night, anybody can park on the street.
well, that's true too. But maybe when we have a code enforcement officer,
Yes. Yes.
That sentence to me is a little
which
confusing.
one?
The one you
Oh,
just read.
Vehicles of occupants of a short-term rental in other than the approved off-street and one legal, and I'd like to discuss the word legal, on-street parking place shall be prohibited between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m.
So we're saying that each house should have a on-street, one on-street parking space, but then we're saying they can't stay there from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m.?
No, we're saying that one can, other than the one on-street space. In other words, they can't have 4 cars parked on the street overnight, and they can't have more than the approved off-street on their property overnight. So if they're approved for 4,
Parking
they
gets
can't
so
have
tricky.
5
Yeah,
overnight.
it does. It does.
My biggest concern is, like, for myself, I drive a big truck. So if you approve 2 parking spaces off street, my truck takes up one, both.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to fit their vehicle next to my truck. So you're going to get people with really large vehicles, such as myself, that, you know, this is tricky. It's great in all theory to think that those 2 cars are going to fit on the property, and this one is going to fit on the street just nice and fine. And in reality, that may not happen. And I know there's not
Well,
much
and
we
that's
can
true
do
if
about
they
that.
have a boat trailer too. And I think what the way this is worded and what it's saying is tough. You have a big truck. If you have 4 legal off-street spaces,
Mhm.
and one of them is taken up by 2 of the 4 are taken
Right.
up by one truck, then you're only going to have 3 cars off-street.
Mhm.
Yeah, trying to explain that to guests is
Yeah.
What
not
happens
fun. But
what
yeah,
happens when the owners are down? And
owners
staying
get
at
to
the
do what
rental?
they want,
Do-
fortunately.
How do the neighbors know the difference when they're going to call this in?
Okay, I tell you one thing I'm starting to realize just most recently, that owners will tell you ahead of time or come out and have the conversation. I've got this vehicle parked here for the weekend. Do you mind? I just wanted to give you a heads up that, whereas when the short-term rental person comes and just does it, it's problematic.
But when
And
when someone's renting, they're going to know whether, I mean, if they're renting their homes, most people that rent their own homes, neighbors know
Yes.
the owners. So they'll
Yes.
know if the owners are there or not. But if
Yes.
it's a short-term rental, such as my company or Amy's company,
Mhm.
all it is a quick phone call to us, and we can look and see if it's the owner or not. I mean, we would know if it was the owner or not. So, our reservations are everybody's name is on them, so so if there were a complaint, obviously, then we would call the owner and say someone's complaining about your parking, and just like we would a guest. But again, I don't know if that's something we legally can do, because it's the owner. They get to do what they want. So that is a tricky situation.
It is a tricky one. I as time goes on, I think we're going to have to work on that.
I think this is a massive education thing. Amy and I run across this stuff all the time. It's just about educating people, and we can write it till we're blue in the face. People don't read. That's the awful part of it. But for me, I think if we state it very clearly in this, and everyone does their part about policing it, as far as making sure people know how many cars and this and that, this is going to be fine.
Yeah, and short-term rental etiquette is something we've never addressed, but maybe a nice little friendly pamphlet would be a nice thing to say. Here's what neighbors like to see. Here's something that, because I know just in my own world, I'm just going to say I have already been called upon to be a real good Samaritan to somebody who had misinformation from their the person they were renting it from. And I said, oh, heavens no, if you are nervous about that, you can park right here in my driveway. I don't use this at this time. I mean, I'd rather have conversations like that facilitate ways to work through some of these issues than to just say, no, it's this and this and this. And sometimes it's just like people don't realize that good etiquette goes a long way to
Goes a
good
long way.
goodwill.
Cindy,
Right. And I
there
think,
is the county has what they call the Good Neighbor Program,
Mhm.
and
I've seen that. You mentioned that. I
Yeah.
think you posted
I'll
something.
actually, after this meeting, I'll send it to all of y'all. It may be something that we should do in Manzanita, and
Well,
something
when
that
you
this
sent it
committee could work
originally,
on.
I thought
Yeah,
that,
it's right
please
here.
do. And can
Yeah,
we put that on the agenda for the next time we
I
meet?
think we
to
should
really
do that.
discuss Adopting that?
yeah, I think once we get this ordinance ready to
Yeah.
go, which I think we can do pretty quick,
Yeah.
I think definitely that good neighbor thing. And I think that I agree with you. I think that's what this ordinance is trying to do. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be absolute. It's not going to be something that, Officer Mike can say, yes, you are, no, you're not. But
Mhm.
at least it gives people some guidelines on how to be a good neighbor and that we don't, what we're trying to accomplish. There's a couple chats I want to try to answer real quick. Catherine Stock asks, are you trying to make a distinction between people using the home versus visitors that might be there during the day, i.e. 4 people staying there and 5 people coming to visit them for the afternoon? And I think the answer to that would be yes.
Yes.
Donna says, in addition, each dwelling unit may occupy one on-street. I think she meant parking space, not dwelling unit. Patrick Johnson agrees with Amy. He asked, why limit off-street parking, driveway parking, if you have room on your property for 8 or 9 cars? And the reason is that people tend to park all over their lawns or just willy-nilly in front of the house.
Yeah.
And that's what the neighbors are complaining about. And so what we're saying is, if you have 4 bedrooms, you need to make 5 parking spaces, which are proper parking spaces, not just all over the property.
Mhm.
Is that,
Can I
That's clear.
ask a quick question?
yeah.
No. When you get your rental license from the city, and I might be crazy in imagining things, but I thought there was something in there where they actually showed you the amount of parking spaces you're allowed to have. Okay, then I'm crazy. I really thought that was the case, because I remember seeing something like that.
Mm-mm. Maybe like years and years and years ago, Judy, you guys did that, but not
That
now.
It was
Because I
before me.
communicate.
I have no knowledge of it.
Yeah, it was
I
before my time
communicate
too.
to my renters the number of cars they're allowed to have. And I say in every communication, you are not allowed to park on the street overnight. If you do, you risk being towed or ticketed. I mean, I say it every single time.
Good.
And
Keep telling them.
Good.
I thought there was, I have a picture of a diagram in my head that I've seen somewhere. And I mean, I tell my renters 4 cars, and you could possibly get 5 if you get one in the garage, but no one ever parks in the garage.
I believe, Miriam, you're correct. In the license application each year, you have to draw a picture of your parking spaces.
Like, I just have a vision of this.
Yeah, but you only have to show the 2 that are mandated by the city.
Okay.
And so this is saying you got to show the maximum number if you want to make a maximum number for your house. And that maximum number would be bedrooms plus 1.
All right. I guess I'm nuts. Sorry.
Folks, this is really great discussion. And I'm really excited about some of the topics that have been brought up. This parking issue clearly is becoming very convoluted. I think the language continues to grow out of proportion despite our efforts to make it more readable. I'm particularly concerned about the issue of parking prohibited between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. That's a enforcement nightmare, even if we have a code enforcement officer at some point, how can you distinguish between somebody who's a short-term rental user and the owner from across the street? So I would just as soon leave that piece out. To Miriam's point, Cannon Beach does have a specific, in their licensing, they have a specific requirement for a parking diagram, and people have to adhere to that. Seaside is looking at the same thing. We do not have that. As was shared, there is a requirement when you apply for the license to show that you have the 2 minimum parking spaces. But beyond that, there isn't anything in the app. So I would suggest that we all look at this and maybe consider going to some of the other local communities and see what their parking ordinance says, particularly Tillamook County, and see if we can't come up with a more concise and specific language use that would benefit everyone.
I'm with you on that, Lee, 100%.
I think we know what Tillamook County says, and it doesn't have the maximum, and it doesn't address on-street parking. I don't disagree that we could, I mean, I guess I agree we could get rid of the whole discussion of on-street and just talk about the off-street. But I worry about what that'll do for some of the neighborhoods. If we at least say it, we're asking people to do it. So, and the other thing is, if we delay this, we're delaying the whole ordinance going into effect.
No way to put a little comma in there and just say in process, nothing like that goes, huh? It has to be, okay.
So
Okay,
my other quick comment would be, you know, what if you have a rental and we're using all of our off-street parking spaces? One of our guests is also using the one on the street parking, but then we have visitors, and they're just swinging by or whatever the case is, and they're parking in the appropriate places, but they walk to our property. If a neighbor calls us and says, okay, you have too many cars, I was under the impression that the city allows, there is day use, there's no.
Correct.
How do we, my concerns are if we get too far into this on-street parking thing, residents are going to take this as it's absolutely only one vehicle, and you know, the city may get flooded with phone calls of people just saying, well, they've got 2 cars and this and that and the other. And you know, in all reality, on the street is a public parking. Yes, we want to limit the vacation rentals, but I really don't know that we have jurisdiction over who parks on the street. We really should just be indicating on the property, and maybe a suggestion of 1 extra car or whatever the case is. I just feel like this may open a larger can of worms.
So basically taking out from in addition each dwelling unit to location. So just taking that whole bit out about on-street parking.
I mean, that's my thoughts. What does anybody else think on that? I just think we're trying to regulate something that can't necessarily be regulated.
I agree. Although I think it just leaves open-ended parking for people. And, you know, I mean, it really, when it comes down to it, it's up to us, the property managers, to make sure that people aren't, you know, parking 10 cars on the street. But I think that, like, if Steve were in this conversation, if he were on this call, he would be fighting for having limited parking spaces on the street, because that seems to be the issue. So, I mean, I get where everybody's coming from, but that it seems like the on-street parking.
I think we can say it, Amy, in this. I just don't think that it's enforceable.
I don't think it's enforceable either. It absolutely, I mean, I agree with you, but you know, I think if it's stated in here and possibly someday, maybe it will be enforceable, but it will be enforceable for us. You know,
And it could be, and at some point, the city may have a better street parking.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the one problem that I have with any kind of parking restrictions, if we're telling them they can't park on the street, well, then we need to have another spot for them to park, you know, in a house.
And we don't
you know,
have that.
What?
We don't have that presently.
No, we don't. And that's an issue.
Yeah.
So if we start telling people you only have, you know, this many spaces, 3 spaces, and they have 4 cars coming, you know, then they ask us, well, where do we park the 4th car? Well, that's a great question. I have no idea. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
so that's another issue with that. But yeah, as far as I mean, I think it should be in here for the case for, you know, for us to enforce, but, you know, it definitely isn't enforceable by the city.
But if it's in there, it's a legal document and we have to enforce it. You know, and is parking overnight on the street a problem? It's during the day that it's a problem.
Well, that's what you can't regulate.
Yeah, you can't regulate.
We can't, you're right, it is not enforceable. We can't regulate the on-street. And so unless the city did something citywide, which is the city is not in a position to do at this point, I think. And I don't have a problem taking it out, but I think the big change in this that we should be looking at is the maximum. We had the maximum buried and now we're putting it up front and center. And I think that will make a big difference to not to the neighbors.
Yes.
I also want to hear what Patrick has to say because Patrick always has good things to say.
Yes, yes.
Hit it, Patrick. Does Patrick have to be unmuted by us?
Everybody can unmute themselves in this call.
Okay.
I learned to check that. I have to hit record though. I forgot.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. Respectfully, I would say that I don't always have good things to add. On this issue of parking, just being somebody who has not been involved as much as you all have, this reads really difficult. Off street, on street. You know, I love the way that Joe describes it. Our issue is we don't want people parking on the grass. We don't want people parking in the yard. I think we can say things as simple as that. I think parking on the street, rather than call it on-street parking, call it street parking or take it out. Like Danielle and Amy say, I'm not sure it's our place to regulate it. I know like Steve wants this more than anything, and I think we all do. But I love the idea that came earlier, which is let's give a handout to folks about being a good neighbor, being a good renter, being respectful to each other, and start maybe there and see if that helps. But I'm not sure we're in a position to enforce that.
I had a discussion with Steve last week and about this, and I thought his issue was on-street parking. And I don't believe it is. I don't think Steve, are you on this call? Because if you are, say something. But I think what Steve was more concerned about was people parking all over the front of the house and jamming onto the lawn. It wasn't as much the and I'm going to call it legal or correct on-street parking, because that, we don't have limits on that. It was more the 97 cars on the lot. So I think we could take it out, and I'll break it to him.
my 2 cents.
He's on the council, and he can always vote against it or vote for a change.
My only 2 cents is on this one. I love attorneys, but I would rather have something written that a 5th grader can understand, or maybe me can understand, rather than an attorney. And especially on this, just to get the message out there. And if we're really concerned about the yard, let's talk about the yard in this. Because as I read this, I didn't ever even think about parking on the grass. And if that's what we're trying to stop, I'm not sure that this legalese is going to cause it.
Patrick, one of the issues with that is that a yard is not defined in any local ordinances except the required yard as mentioned in the zoning ordinance. So what is a yard in terms of, is it landscaped or not? Is it grass, or is it plants, or is it bark dust, or is it gravel? There isn't any definitive way in our language to limit parking in those areas. That's what we want, but it's really not. Again, we're at an unenforceable issue here.
Except that we are asking farther down, we are shalling that these parking spaces have to be approved when the inspection is done and when the license is given.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Everything has to be defined up front. But when people fall outside that parameter, I don't know whose responsibility is to go tell them they can't park on the lawn. I'm just saying it's an enforcement issue again.
Right, right.
You know, coming from the world of regulatory systems, you can't write something if you can't enforce it. It's just not, it's not an acceptable language in an ordinance or in a code.
I agree with Lee. When we were writing this, we were almost writing it in a vacuum, because as I represent, the people at large. Anyway, to make a long story short, I'm seeing now that it's just much more complicated and unenforceable, candidly. So
read it now.
Pardon?
Read it the way it stands now. It just says all short-term rental properties must provide off-street parking spaces for a minimum of 2 vehicles. That's code.
Mhm.
The maximum number of vehicles allowed off-street at each home shall be the number of sleeping rooms plus 1. Such places shall not be blocked and shall be available to people using the short-term rental. Location and design of the parking spaces shall comply with all pertinent city ordinances, standards, and policies. And then later down, we'll get to that. It says we'll have to change the off-street. A parking plan, map, and notice identifying the city-approved number and location of parking spaces shall be posted in a conspicuous place within each short-term rental. Language shall be included in the notice that parking shall not, under any circumstances, hinder the path of any emergency vehicle, and that renters may be cited and fined if this requirement is not satisfied. The maximum number of parking places shall be included in any advertisement of the rental listing.
I personally hate that, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you explain that further, Amy, Danielle? You seem on the same page here. So
putting that in all advertisements and listings I'd have to redo all my brochures. I mean,
yeah,
it would be a huge undertaking to do that.
Yeah, that's actually trying to think of a nice word. That's just mean.
okay, so just if that last sentence, the maximum number of parking spaces shall be included in any advertisement or the rental listing, if that's removed, are you guys?
I think we could put something in there, Lee, that just states something about each guest should be notified of the parking, and then leave it up to that individual person to say, okay, how are we going to notify? Are we going to? We could even put it in our listing.
I agree with that, except for that, then you're getting into the way people conduct business. We personally put it in our contracts, how many parking spaces everyone has.
So do we.
And it should be, and everyone should do it that way. But I think that's up to whomever's running their business.
Yeah, I don't think it should be included in advertisement. That's
definitely not.
Wow, that's a massive undertaking, and for companies, that's a costly.
Is it too loose to say that the maximum number of parking spaces shall be conveyed to each renter before their visit?
No. That's a good.
I think that's great, Joe.
I do too.
Having the parking plan, map, and notice up posted inside the unit is really a critical element here, because I'm going to guess that you currently don't have to do that Amy, Danielle?
Correct.
No.
But that is a very key important component, but the biggest component is to tell them how many before they arrive, because they've already made their plans and they're on their way here in their vehicles. So it's really good to give that. And like Amy said, hers is in all her rental agreements. They're in all of our rental agreements. And they're online on every single one of our listings. So it's really important to get that information to the guests before they arrive, and even sometimes before they book. We give them a car limit in that route. And I think that's really important, because some people might be planning on coming with 8 different cars and they can only have 4. That house might not work for them then if they can only have 4 cars. So we try to give as much information before arriving versus, just the stuff that's in the house.
And that's all, that's you two. Again, I'm going to specify that's you two, but that's sometimes not the entire renter community.
True.
Agencies that are
I
very
agree.
And another thing that really is one of the things that the public feel, the homeowners feel real negative about, is when they get, are pulling out of their driveway and somebody's pulling right up there to park in front of the house. Like 4th of July, we were expecting tons of company, which we had, but we couldn't say that they were going to arrive at 10 and leave at 4. And we were open to sharing our space, but we literally couldn't get things out of the car. We ended up letting people go back to the park and park there and walk over. I feel like as a homeowner, that's invasive, because of short-term rental had it all covered. And I think we just need to, but once again, my husband's learned to be very proactive and say, we're going to be using the front of this house. We've got some drop-off things because we enter through the downstairs, and could you just wait a while, or you're free to use it as soon as we've unloaded our groceries or whatever. We're finding that to use our voices is a good thing, and nobody ever gets ugly about it, and we are still meeting everybody's needs.
I think so. And I think the other thing to remember is, for instance, I have a large family. I am not, when people come to visit me, a full-time resident, there's going to be cars parked all over the place. If I have a party, there's going to be cars parked all over the place. If I'm a part-timer and I come down with a big family, there's going to be cars. And the rentals, although we tend to focus on them, they are only 17.5% of the homes in the area. So we can't do everybody and we can't enforce everybody, but we can just try to make the renters understand that parking 97 cars is not going to make the neighbors happy.
And it's very rude.
Right. So just let's go back to this. Can we agree on this?
Yes.
First paragraph.
Yes.
Anybody, any problems with it?
Would it help to add a definition of a parking space to this ordinance so people know what to expect? Or should that just be a handout that's available in the packet?
I would put it more in the inspection personally.
Yeah, me too.
Good point though, Judy.
Yeah. So we took out this next big hunk because it was just too confusing. And then we've got parking shall not under any circumstances hinder the potential path of any emergency vehicle. Trailers for boats and all terrain vehicles may be allowed, but shall not exceed the available parking for each short-term renter.
There you go. Good.
Exactly.
Renters may be cited and fined for parking illegally. Vehicles of occupants of the short-term renters. So we really would take this whole paragraph out, correct?
Vehicles of occupants of a short-term rental.
Yes.
It's
Works for me.
Yeah.
works with, it's pretty unwieldy, I would say.
Okay,
And
parking
then-
plan and map
yeah.
shall be posted in a conspicuous place. The language shall be included in the notice that parking shall not under any circumstances hinder the path of any emergency vehicle and that renters may be fined and cited. The
Wasn't that-
maximum number of parking
wasn't-
spaces shall be conveyed to each renter before the visit.
Excuse me.
Yep.
That's being repeated about
Yep.
the emergency vehicle. That's up in the paragraph above.
Judy, is there going to be a special, those parking plan maps? This may be jumping ahead, but I want to make a note of it so I can jump on things. Is that something that the city's going to make and give to us with our license, or is that something we're making and posting in the house?
It's my understanding that that the owners will create this document.
Okay.
This is something that really hasn't been worked out for implementation. And I've had a lot of concern about it, because if people are putting up a map telling people where to park, you know, we won't be, the city's not going to be assigning or approving these spaces except for new properties that come on and with their 3-year inspections. And so I've had this concern that people are just going to put up whatever they want. And what if those are bad spots, you know, because they're going to be required to put this up right away. I don't know
that you need to concern yourself with if they're the right. I mean, if that person's going through the inspection process and they're pointing out those parking spots, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know that anybody could screw that up.
But in the meantime, you know, people are saying, we need to get these done right away. It's in the ordinance. And so I've been getting questions about it that, frankly, you know, it concerns me.
Do we need a map?
I think we need a map, but if we took out the word city approved, then yeah, they're going to put it maybe in the wrong places until
yes,
their license renewal where they have to draw the map.
Yes. I think that would go a long ways, because they're expecting the city to approve this
before they draw the map.
Yeah, and I have no way to implement this if it's written this way. We don't have a person to go out and check these spots, and I don't really have time to have everybody send me a map and try to figure out how to approve it.
I think that kind of stuff's going to be done with renewal though, right?
Exactly.
Not with renewals, but with their 3-year inspections and when they apply. But in the meantime,
in the renewal, don't they have to draw a map for you?
We're going to have them draw a map. When they apply, they have to show where their 2 spaces are. But if they have more spaces, this is where the problem lies.
As I recall, the renewal, that multi-page document I had to fill out to renew my license.
We aren't doing that anymore. That was something Cynthia wanted us to do. And it was very cumbersome. And, but it did give us kind of we got the pictures of all the properties, and where it's just set a real good marker for us to go back to. And it was a good educational piece for the owners. And but it was just massively cumbersome.
Okay. So Judy, I don't know if you've seen what's on the county's website. They have what's called a site plan. So when we apply for a county license, whether it be the homeowner or us as a rental company, we have to fill out this short-term vacation rental application site plan, which basically already has a little drawing of, okay, here's your dwelling unit. You know, it kind of gives you an example. And then they give you a gridded piece of paper for you to draw, you know, and this again is not to scale. You're just drawing a box for the house.
We have that.
Where your parking spots go.
That's part of the
that
application.
Should be plenty.
Danielle, I don't think the problem is not new rentals or inspections. It's in the interim. Like tomorrow, if somebody wants to make a sign.
Gotcha.
So if we take out the city approved, they don't have to have they don't have to send it to Judy to have her see if it's good.
Because we just don't have any way to do that. I mean, we have very little staff, and we're as overwhelmed right now as the short-term rental agencies. You know, we have no more time to.
And Judy, I wouldn't worry about
that kind of thing, but I have to worry about it because I get all the emails from people wanting to know what to do. And I'm completely overrun by people trying to figure out how to implement this ordinance. And I don't have the answers because
Yeah.
You know, it's,
Okay, so can we just, does anybody disagree about taking out the word city approved?
Oh, I think it should be removed.
Done.
And Joe, if you can take your cursor up to the paragraph above,
Right.
take the first sentence out. Parking shall not under any circumstances, because it's redundant,
Yeah.
redundancy down below. Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next section, I think we are also going to take out,
Mhm.
except that I do think we should keep in the overnight occupancy or sleeping is not permitted.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay, let's look at the whole thing again.
Oh, this is pretty streamlined.
There you
Mhm.
go. Any comments from the public? Any more comments from the work group? Yay. Catherine Stock said, are we trying to fix everything today? And the answer is yes.
That's a broad question.
I think we've got almost all of it. Okay. Noise. I added the L, Judy, to the LC and
thank
C.
you. Thank you.
Okay. And now this is another question that gets back to the city council meeting last night. I can show you city noise ordinance 94-6, the draft, if that's okay with you, Leila. Patrick, just one question. Patrick says, can a friend sleep in her camper van in our driveway? No. Lee already answered, but just no. So the noise ordinance, we either leave this in or we just say that the short-term rentals must comply with the city noise ordinance. And again, my opinion is I'd rather have it in both. But Leila, you have any problem with my sharing the noise ordinance
Oh,
draft?
not at all. No, go ahead.
Do we need an S? This is a grammar thing on right of way. Should it be right of way or rights of way with the S?
Rights of way, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, rights of way.
It just sounds funny when I read it, but that's just
Right.
me.
Yeah. So here is the noise ordinance, and what Leila has done is taken the noise ordinance and added what we put in there with the 55 decibels and the 70 decibels. And so one option is just to say you got to comply with this ordinance. The other one is to list it again in our short-term rental ordinance and say, and you have to do whatever else the noise ordinance says.
If you're sharing it with us, we can't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to stop that share and share the other one. Sorry.
It's okay.
So this is the noise ordinance, and then added to it is the one that we did for the short-term rentals. So we didn't put all this stuff that's on here into the short-term rental ordinance. But because it's a city ordinance, people have to comply with it anyway.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about putting it in the ordinance, just making things more difficult to get through. If someone wanted to know the noise ordinance, they could go over and look at it. But
Exactly. I don't want to put the big thing in the ordinance. I just want to know, should we keep the part we've got in there?
yes, where it says refers to this ordinance.
Right.
Yes, yes, definitely.
The rest of you?
Can I ask a quick question about number 5 really fast? So does this include everything that's happening off Ted Erickson Road? They're only allowed to work until 6 o'clock at night? And
Yes.
not before 7?
Yes.
All right then.
Back to an enforcement issue, though.
Sorry. Okay, deferred. All right. Yeah, I don't think this whole ordinance should be in that's too much.
But definitely the reference needs to be in there. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Should the,
where to find it.
yeah, the question is more not should this be in there, but should my dog's about to bark, so we'll see what happens. Should we keep this part in there and
Yes.
then add the sentence, all STRs should also comply with the,
Yes.
yes? Anybody from the public? Okay. And that is that.
Wow.
This ordinance. Yay, guys.
So I have a shout out to our esteemed new city manager. I'm just curious, Layla, watching this activity today, do you sense that we're going down a good path?
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, I really do. I really appreciated the conversation. I think that what y'all have come up with it's addressed a lot of the concerns I had about implementation. It was refreshing to kind of hear other folks talk about it. So I think this is really solid. Yeah, I think it's great work.
Thank you. So the next step would be to send this as written right now to James, have James look at it, and if he makes any substantial changes for us to look at what he's done, but if he's making little wording changes, I think we're ready to go. Does that make sense to all of you?
When are we proposing that this is going into effect? I know there was questions about when that was going to happen.
Layla, I'm going to defer to you.
Well, I think if we can get this posted in time, it will be adopted by council in August. And I believe we had 60 days.
30 days. Well, you got first reading and second reading.
Yeah, so we have first reading is in August, second reading will be September, and then it would be 30 days. It would go into effect after that. So it would be
In October?
October.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be ready for posting. We have until, it has to be posted 7 days, now that we know this, 7 days
Minimum.
prior to the council meeting. So I think, as you said, James generally takes about a week.
Yeah.
So that would put us mid-July. And again, if we have to have another meeting, we could have it right after he gets it back to us. Fortunately, we are not a standing committee of the city, so we can have a meeting less than 7 days, without 7 days notice. I would prefer the 7 days notice, but if it makes the difference between our posting this for August or not, I would say we should just meet and say yay.
Mhm.
Is that okay with you, Layla?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. Anybody have anything else that we should discuss today before this goes to James?
I just want to say, Joe, you're amazing. Keeping everybody in line and keeping us all up to date, and you're a great chairperson for this.
Thank you.
Very appreciated.
Yes, very much appreciated. Very much.
I had a couple of questions. I missed the last meeting because I was traveling, but what happened, what happened to our phone number, getting the service, to have that universal phone number? And how are we doing with the extra parking?
I think, Cindy, what we decided to do was, because we want to get this ordinance posted in time. We just said, we're just going to ignore everything else until we get this done. But
Okay.
those are not off the table. Also not off the table
I
is,
just wanted to be sure.
yeah,
that they-
emergency preparedness.
Okay.
Also, they're not, we can't do anything about it. We can say, here's what we want. And I think we have said, we want some off-street parking someplace. We want an 800 number. We want a code officer. And I think we've made that clear to the council,
Mhm.
but we can't do anything about making it happen. We just have to have the staff of the city be able to take a breath long enough to say what else is on our plate.
Bless you.
Yeah, right. Before we can get to it. But I think in the next couple months, what we should be focusing on is the emergency preparedness. What's that going to look like that will work? Some ideas that we can help the city with in terms of density, because that's still a big issue.
Mhm.
And anything that we can do to help the cause of the off-street parking, the 800 number, and the ordinance person.
Mhm.
You hit it, Joe.
Julianne?
You have to hit the ground running in this committee. You miss one meeting and you're just like in the dark.
Julianne?
I was wondering if you did anything, because I've missed meetings too, about the issue of certain developments identifying no short-term rentals, and then that having that density impact on the rest of the city.
Yeah, that's something we'll have to look at long.
That's not yet addressed.
That's correct.
Okay. It's an important item.
Absolutely.
Julianne, did you see my message?
I'll look at it, sweet
Okay.
girl.
Anything
Okay.
else?
Just really quick, if Judy's still here, I just, Judy, I'd be interested in maybe talking to you about that parking thing, plan, just what that would look like. And maybe, I've got someone that's really good and savvy with computers and that stuff. Maybe we can create a template that you can just hand out to people and they can draw on it, or whatever, like just however we can help you.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are done. Thank you. Oh, there's couple more messages. I'm hoping they just say, thanks, goodbye.
A great backdrop.
If you have a density Patrick asks if you have a density recommendation, who can we email? You can either send it to Judy or you can send it directly to me. It's joe@joesdomain.com. I'll type it right in here.
Oh, one more chat item.
Yep.
Good, because I don't know if there's an apostrophe there or not, Joe.
That's right. There's not, because you can't do, by the way, that's wrong.
Yes, you got an S in there.
Oh, yeah.
You got two S's. Yeah.
Haste makes waste. There. You can't put apostrophes in email.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So Patrick, you can mail it to me. Love to hear what you've got to say. Anything else?
Great work, guys.
Okay. Yeah, really. I'm impressed. Thank you.
And Amy, don't forget to do the neighbor thing, the good neighbor.
Do you want me to send it to you again?
Yes, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. I'll send it to the whole group. I'll make myself a note of it right now because I got something to do right after.
Thank you.
Yes.
Judy, thanks for running the meeting today. Did a great job.
I'll learn.
Great job, Judy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
See you on the 8th.
Our next meeting is scheduled for the 13th, but I don't believe we need to have it unless we hear back from James by Tuesday, which I kind of doubt.
Mhm.
So maybe a question mark on the 13th?
Yeah, I would say probably, I'd say 80% no on the 13th,
Okay.
because I just don't think we're gonna have it back from James by then. So
I
we're
have to
gonna
take
have
my
to-
mom to the doctor on the 13th, so
Yeah,
that'd
so
be great.
cancel the 13th, and we'll probably later in the week, just on the spur of the moment if we have to.
Did
But
you
we-
say cancel the 13th?
Huh?
Did you
Cancel the
say
13th,
cancel it? Okay.
yeah. 'Cause we're just,
It'll fill in with something else. It's fine.
yeah, we can send it to him. I can send it to Layla today, and you can send it to him soon. And then we'll just see when we get it back. And as soon as I get it back, I'll let you all know, and then we can work from there.
Okay.
But I don't imagine there's going to be a lot,
Mm,
because he's already looked at it and we didn't change that much.
That's great.
Okay.
I think we
I
did
gotta
good.
go. I have a call holding for me.
Okay, bye.
All right,
yeah.
thanks you guys. Appreciate all your work.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you all.
Thank
Yeah.
you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, see you
Have a
later.
good day.
Bye.
Bye.